He whispered, "Tell my mom I'm sorry," then died before I could answer. The first time I met Amarjeet Singh, we were both standing in line for the same punishment. Push-ups in the dust, rifles on our backs, sweat rolling down our faces. He looked over at me with a smirk and said, "Looks like we're gonna be best friends, bro." That's how it started. No introduction, no questions. Just two Sikh soldiers in a place that didn't care where we came from, only what we could endure. We were both posted to a border unit known for high-risk patrols, the kind where no one really comes back untouched. Either your body breaks, or your mind does. Amarjeet, though, he never flinched. He joked even when we had no reason to laugh. He prayed when the rest of us forgot how to. He used to say, "Waheguru doesn't need your temple visits, just your honesty." Our bond grew fast. In just 3 months, I knew more about him than I did about my own cousins. His mom was everything to him. He didn't talk about his dad much, just said he left when Amarjeet was 10. After that, his mom worked cleaning houses, 3 jobs a day to raise him and his little sister. "I owe her everything," he told me once. "That's why I joined. For her. To give her something to be proud of." I wish I had told him that. She was already proud. That she didn't need medals or uniforms to love him more. One night during a routine check, our unit got a call. 2 suspicious figures had been spotted near a restricted zone. We geared up fast, grabbed rifles, double-checked, ammo, and rolled out. Amarjeet and I were always paired together. He liked it that way. "If I get shot," he used to joke, "I want your ugly face to be the last thing I see." That night, those words didn't feel funny anymore. We found tracks in the dark, 2 sets of boots, one heavier than the other. I covered left while he went right. It was quiet, too quiet. Then a sound, rustling, quick. We didn't wait. Shouted warnings, then gunshots. Fast, loud, then silence. I turned and Amarjeet wasn't where he should have been. "Sing!" I yelled. No answer. I moved forward, my heart thudding like a drum in my ears. I found him lying on the slope, hand pressed to his chest, blood soaking his uniform. His turban had fallen off and his lips trembled like he was freezing, though the night wasn't cold. I dropped beside him. "Amar! Look at me!" I shouted. He tried to speak, but coughed instead. Blood ran down his chin. He grabbed my arm. Tight. His eyes locked onto mine, wide and desperate. "Tell my mom I'm sorry." That's all he said. And then, nothing. His grip loosened. His eyes froze. No breath, no blink. I sat there, holding him, unable to speak, unable to cry. He died before I could answer, before I could even say I will, before I could promise him that I'd find her and tell her everything. The rest was a blur. Reinforcements came, enemies dead or vanished. They pulled his body from my arms, wrapped him up like just another number, another casualty. But he wasn't, just another soldier. He was my brother, and now I had a promise to keep, not for the army, not for medals, just for a mother who had no idea that her son, the pride of her life, had whispered her name with his final breath. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face, blood in his beard, lips moving just enough to say those 6 words. "Tell my mom I'm sorry," over and over, like a loop playing inside my head. When we got back to base, they took his body away like it was procedure, like it was just another task. Tag him, pack him, fly him home. A major walked past me, patted my shoulder and said, "You okay, soldier?" I didn't answer. What was the point? Amarjeet wasn't okay, and I had something to do. I went to the storage room, opened his locker. It felt wrong, like invading someone's life, but I needed something, anything, to help me find her. Her name, a picture, a number, something. Inside there was nothing fancy, just a small notebook wrapped in a piece of cloth. One photograph folded and worn at the edges, Amarjeet, his mother, and a little girl who had to be his sister. His arm around both. He looked younger, no beard yet, still that same smile. In the notebook, he'd scribbled random things, dates, song lyrics, some kind of prayer he wrote again and again in Gurmukhi. Then I saw it. Her name, Harmeet Kaur. Below it, an address, Chandigarh, Sector 22. I left the base 2 days later, took a week's leave. No one stopped me. Maybe they knew. Maybe they understood. When I boarded that train, I felt like I was carrying the weight of two men. Not one. My own grief. His final request. Chandigarh was loud and crowded, like most cities. But all I could think about was walking up to that house and looking her in the eyes. What do you even say to a mother like that? Your son died in my arms. He told me to tell you he's sorry. Sorry for what? What did he mean? Why sorry? I found the house. Simple. Small. Blue door. Rusting slightly at the bottom. A nameplate, with the word Singh written in peeling white paint. I stood there for a minute, just breathing, just trying to gather the courage. Then I knocked. It took a few seconds. A woman opened the door, her hair tied in a bun, lines on her face, showing years of work and worry. She looked at me like she was trying to place me. Her eyes lingered on the uniform. Yes? She asked, voice calm but distant. Ma'am, Harmeet Kaur? I asked. She nodded slowly. I hesitated. I served with your son, Amarjeet. Her face changed instantly. Not fear, not sadness. Just this quiet tension, like she already knew. Her hands trembled as she opened the door wider. Come, she said softly. I stepped inside. The house smelled like incense and old fabric. There were pictures on the wall. Amarjeet in his school uniform, Amarjeet at graduation, Amarjeet holding a cricket bat. Sit, she said, pointing to a wooden chair. She sat across from me. He's okay? I looked at the floor. My mouth felt dry. No, ma'am. I'm sorry. Amarjeet didn't make it. She didn't cry right away. Didn't scream. She just stared at me, eyes blank. Her lips moved like she was whispering to herself. Maybe a prayer. Maybe just his name. I placed the photograph from his locker on the table. He wanted me to tell you something before he died. His last words were, "Tell my mom I'm sorry." That's when she cried. Not loudly, just tears rolling down, hands covering her face. I sat there frozen, feeling like I'd just broken someone twice. He said that? She asked between sobs. I nodded. Yes, I swear. Those were his words. She got up slowly, walked to a shelf, and pulled down a small red box. She opened it. Inside were old letters, photos, a medal, and then a folded piece of paper. She handed it to me. It was from Amarjeet, dated 2 years ago. One line in it struck me hard. If anything ever happens to me, tell Ma I'm sorry for being away so much. He'd carried that guilt all this time. I sat there, unsure what to say next. Because in that moment, it didn't feel like anything I said could ever be enough. Her tears stopped, but the silence between us stayed heavy, like something neither of us wanted to touch. She folded the letter and placed it back inside the red box, then sat down again, her hands in her lap, eyes fixed on the floor. You were with him. When it happened, she finally asked, her voice low, barely above a whisper. I nodded. He was shot during a patrol. We didn't expect it. It happened fast. I tried to stop the bleeding, tried to keep him awake. He grabbed my arm and said those words. And then he was gone. She closed her eyes. He always said the army would make me proud, but I told him I'd rather have my son than a medal. Her words punched a hole right through me. Amarjeet used to say the same thing at night when we sat by the barracks talking about home. She didn't want me to go, he'd told me, once. But I needed to prove something. To myself, to her, to life. He loved you, I said. He talked about you more than anyone else. He said you were the strongest person he knew. Her eyes watered again. But this time, she smiled, faintly. He was always stubborn, always pushing too hard. Even when he was sick as a child, he never stayed in bed. Always wanted to go out and play, fight with the older boys. His father left, but he never let me carry the burden alone. At 12, he was working weekends just to help me pay rent. I listened quietly. She needed to say it, and I needed to hear it. He once stole 2 mangoes from the neighbor's tree and got caught, she continued, her voice cracking slightly with memory. He came running into the house crying, not because he was scared of the neighbor, but because he knew I'd be disappointed. That's who he was. He carried guilt like it was his second skin. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the prayer book from his locker. This was in his things. He wrote prayers inside, pages and pages. She took it carefully, like it was something sacred, flipped through it slowly. Her eyes stopped at a page. She placed her hand on it and whispered a few words under her breath. Then she kissed it and held it to her chest. "You were his friend?" she asked. "His brother," I said without thinking. "We had each other's backs. He made everyone laugh, even when we were scared. He made me believe in things I didn't even understand." She stood up and walked into the next room. I waited. When she returned, she held something wrapped in a white cloth. She unwrapped it slowly, an old faded blue turban. "This was his first," she said. "When he was 15. He kept it. Said it reminded him of becoming a man." She placed it in my hands. "You take it." I hesitated. "Ma'am, I can't." "You can. He would have wanted you to have it. You brought him back to me, even if it's just his last words." I couldn't argue. I took it, my hands trembling, not because of the cloth itself, but because of what it meant. Everything he was, everything he believed in, everything he left behind, it was all tied in that simple piece of fabric. As I stood up to leave, she walked me to the door. "Stay for tea?" she asked, almost shyly. I shook my head gently. "Maybe another time. I need to visit someone." She understood. She placed a hand on my shoulder. "Tell his sister. Tell her gently. She's only 16. She looks up to him like he was some kind of superhero." "I will," I said. "I promise." As I stepped out into the street, I felt like I'd been through something far heavier than war. I didn't just carry the loss of a comrade. I carried the weight of a mother's broken heart, a sister's unanswered prayers, and a soldier's final whisper. But I still had one more promise left to fulfill, and I wasn't leaving until I did. I took a rickshaw to the address Amarjeet had scribbled in one of his notes, his aunt's house, where his younger sister stayed for school. It wasn't far, 15 minutes maybe, but it felt like hours. I kept running through every possible way to say it, to make it softer, to somehow carry the blow without delivering the full weight. But how do you tell a girl that the only brother she's ever known, the one she looked up to like a star in the sky, was gone? When I got there, it was a modest apartment on the 3rd floor. A cracked nameplate outside read, "Carr Family." I stood outside the door, hand hovering in the air, frozen. I wasn't ready, but I knocked anyway. It was his aunt who opened. She looked older than expected, with a tired kindness in her eyes. She studied my uniform for a second and her face fell. Not from shock, but from understanding. Like she'd been waiting for this knock since the day Amarjeet left for training. "You're his friend, aren't you?" she asked, moving aside to let me in. I nodded. "Yes. He talked about you. And Simran." At the mention of the name, she glanced toward the inner room. "She's in her room, studying." I looked at her. "Can I talk to her?" She hesitated. "Should I be the one to tell her?" "No," I said. "He died holding my arm. I think she deserves the truth from me." She didn't argue. She nodded once and walked quietly into the hallway. A minute later, Simran stepped out. 16, just like he'd said. Long braid, school uniform still on, holding a book. She looked at me, confused, then at the badge on my chest. Her smile appeared slowly. "You're from his unit? Did Pai send you?" she asked brightly. The air left my lungs. "I served with him," I said carefully. "We were on the same team." Her smile faded just slightly, like a shadow passing over her face. "Where is he?" I swallowed hard. "Simran, can we sit down?" "No. Tell me now. Where is he?" "He's not coming home," I said, my voice cracking. She froze, blinked, shook her head once like trying to erase what she'd heard. "No, that's not possible. He just called last week. He said he'd be back next month. He promised." "I know," I said softly. "He wanted that more than anything." She stared at me, then looked at her aunt, who stood in the hallway silently crying. "No," Simran said again, this time louder. "You're lying." I shook my head, eyes stinging. "I wish I was. He died in the field. Fast. Brave. He didn't suffer long." She dropped her book. It hit the floor with a dull thud. "No," she whispered, and then her legs gave out. caught her just before she fell. Her whole body shook as she sobbed into my chest. "He promised me," she cried. "He said he'd take me to college himself. He said he'd see me in my uniform. He said—" "I know," I whispered. "He told me everything. He loved you more than life itself." She clutched my shirt with both fists, her tears soaking through the fabric. "Why didn't he come back?" "I don't know," I admitted, my own voice broken. But his last words were for your mom. He said, "Tell my mom I'm sorry." That's all he had time to say. Simran cried harder. Her aunt came over, wrapping her arms around both of us. We sat there, the three of us, in silence and sorrow, holding on to each other like pieces of a broken picture, trying to make sense of what remained. After a while, Simran looked up. "Can I see him?" I hesitated. "His body's on its way. There will be a ceremony, a proper one. You'll get to say goodbye." She nodded, wiped her face, and whispered, "Did he wear his kara when he died?" I nodded. "Yes. He never took it off." She smiled faintly through her tears. Then he wasn't alone. And in that moment, I realized something. This wasn't just about passing on his last words. It was about holding up the pieces of the people he left behind. And I wasn't done yet. The next morning, I returned to base. I had to be there for the final arrangements. Amarjeet's body was arriving. That evening, it felt surreal. The same man I had laughed with, fought beside, shared food with, now coming back sealed in a box marked Hero. The commanding officer called me into his office. He looked tired but respectful. "You were the last man. With him?" he asked. "Yes, sir." He nodded slowly. "The official ceremony is in 2 days. Honors will be given, flag presentation, the works. Family has been informed. You'll escort the coffin." "Yes, sir." He looked at me again, long and heavy. "You okay, soldier?" "No, sir. But I will be." He didn't press. Just gave me a paper to sign and dismissed me. That night I stood by the runway as the army truck pulled in. The rear door opened, and there he was, Amarjeet Singh, in a coffin draped with the national flag. It was too clean, too quiet, too still, like they'd tried to pack his whole life into something square and polished. But I knew better. Amarjeet wasn't something you could box up. I stood at attention as the guard saluted. My hands were steady, but my chest was full of storms. The moment they handed me the flag, I held it like it was more than fabric, like it carried every laugh, every story, every night we stayed up talking about stupid things that didn't matter. Until now, when they suddenly did. The drive to his village was long. I sat in the front of the military van, coffin in the back, flag still folded, still, clutched in my hand. I didn't speak, neither did the driver. There was nothing to say. When we reached, it was early morning. The whole village had gathered outside his home. People stood in silence, some crying, some just holding each other, stunned. His mother was waiting at the door, dressed in all white, eyes swollen from days of crying. Simran stood beside her, holding her hand like she was the adult now. I stepped down, saluted, and then walked to them with the flag. "Ma'am," I said, voice shaking, "he asked me to give this to you." She took it slowly, held it to her chest, then kissed it. Simran reached for it, her fingers trembling, and together they held it like it was a part of him, which in a way, it was. They brought the coffin inside. Flowers were placed. Prayers were whispered. A line of villagers stood outside waiting to offer their respects. I stayed at the back, near the door, watching as one after another paid tribute to a man most of them had known only as that boy who joined the army. Now, he was a symbol. Now everyone cared. A local politician came, said the usual empty words. Sacrifice, nation, bravery. I wanted to shout. I wanted to say, don't talk about sacrifice like it's something beautiful. It's not. It's cruel. It's sudden. It takes people like Amarjeet and leaves behind a silence so loud, it rings in your ears forever. But I didn't say anything. I just stood still. After the formalities, Simran came to me. "Can you tell me something?" she asked. "Anything. What was he doing? Right before he died? Was he scared?" I looked her in the eyes. No, he wasn't scared. He was focused, like he always was. He knew what he was doing. He didn't run. He didn't panic. He just fought until the end. She nodded. That sounds like him. I pulled a small object from my pocket. His kara. The metal was scratched, a little blood still dried around the edge. He wore this until the last second, I said, placing it in her hand. He wanted you to have it. She took it like it was a piece of treasure. I'll wear it every day. And in that moment, I saw something shift in her. She wasn't the same girl I met at her aunt's house. She looked older now, sharper, like pain had aged her soul overnight. But there was something else too. Pride, because no matter how broken this loss left them, they knew one thing. Amarjit Singh didn't just die as a soldier, he died as their son, their brother, their reason to hold their heads a little higher. The day of the funeral came with a kind of silence that words couldn't reach. The village gathered around the open ground near the Gurudwara, where the last rites would take place. Uniformed, men from our unit stood shoulder to shoulder, rifles in hand, faces tight with grief disguised as discipline. Amarjit lay in the center, his body draped in the flag he'd once promised to protect with his life. And he did. I stood a few steps away from his mother and sister, watching them, watching everyone. No one spoke unless they had to. Even the children, usually too young to understand death, sensed the weight of it all. The priest began chanting prayers. Sacred hymns filled the space. Melodies Amarjit had grown up hearing every morning in his mother's home. Now they were the soundtrack to his final journey. I kept waiting for him to sit up, crack a joke, say something stupid like, "Stop crying, I'm not dead yet." But he didn't, and he never would. When the salutes fired, 3 gunshots into the sky, Simran flinched. Her mother didn't even blink. She just held onto the flag tighter, eyes locked on her son's still face like she was trying to memorize every line before the fire took it away. Then came the part no one prepares you for. The cremation. They asked if a family member would light the fire. Simran stepped forward. Her hand didn't shake. Her legs didn't tremble. She just looked at her brother, whispered something into the silence, and lit the flame. I looked away. Not because I couldn't take it, but because it felt too personal. Like this moment wasn't mine to witness. It belonged to them. Afterward, people began to leave. Slowly, quietly. I stayed behind, helping collect what was left. Some ash, bits of burnt cloth, a few flowers. The priest handed Simran a small container, his remains. She took it without a word and held it to her chest, the way a child holds a favorite toy. We walked back to the house. No one said anything. No one needed to. That evening, I sat with the family on the floor, sharing a simple meal. Dal, roti, and silence. Simran finally broke it. Did he ever talk about what he wanted to do after the army? I nodded. He wanted to start a school. Said he didn't want other kids to feel helpless like he did growing up. He wanted to teach discipline, pride, and God, all in one room. Her mother smiled, tears caught in the corner of her eyes. He used to line up the neighborhood boys and make them do drills, made them wear socks even in the heat. Called it his academy. I laughed, the first real laugh since he died. Yeah, that sounds exactly like him. She turned to me. Will you stay here for a few days? I will, I said. As long as you need. I slept in Amarjit's old room that night. His bed was small, but his presence filled the space. His books were still stacked beside the window. His medals hung crookedly on the wall. I sat on the bed, holding his diary again, flipping through the pages. Near the back was an entry I hadn't seen before. The writing was messier than usual. Rushed. If I die before I fix everything, I hope someone tells them I tried. I never wanted to leave anyone behind feeling less, least of all my mom, or Simran. I stared at that page until the ink blurred. He had tried. He gave everything. And still, he died with guilt in his heart. That's the part people don't understand about soldiers. It's not just bullets that kill them. It's the weight they carry, the apologies they never get to explain, the promises they break simply by dying too soon. And now I had to decide what to do with what he left behind. Because Amarjit's story couldn't end in fire and folded flags. It had to mean something more. The next morning I woke up early. Not because I had anything planned, but because sleep had become pointless. My mind kept looping back to that diary entry. If I die before I fix everything. Amarjit hadn't just fought for his country. He fought for peace in his own heart. And even in his last breath, that war wasn't over. After tea, I walked to the small school where Simran studied. I stood outside the gate, watching from a distance as kids her age laughed, played, carried books heavier than their shoulders. Amarjeet would have wanted something better for them. Not just education, but guidance, a path, discipline. He always believed knowledge without strength was incomplete. That's when the idea started. I returned to the house and found Simran alone in the living room, her mother resting in the other room. She was flipping through Amarjeet's prayer book again, the same one I had handed her days ago. "Simran," I said, sitting beside her, "I've been thinking." She looked up. He talked a lot about starting something after the army. A school, not just for math and writing, but for life. Discipline, leadership, pride in who we are. She nodded slowly. He used to say, "I don't just want to teach kids how to read. I want to teach them how to stand up." I smiled. "Exactly. So what if we did it?" She blinked. "What do you mean?" "What if we opened something in his name? A youth camp, or an academy, somewhere young boys and girls can come after school, learn leadership, physical training, seek history, community service, all the things Amarjeet stood for." She looked away, thinking. Her voice was soft when she replied, "We don't have money for that." "I'll find it," I said. "We don't need much to start, just a small ground, some equipment, a name. We already have that." "What would we call it?" she asked, her eyes beginning to light up. "The Amarjeet Singh Youth Academy." She didn't say anything right away. Then she reached out and held my hand. "I think he'd like that. I think he'd be proud." The next few days I met with locals, spoke to the village head, found a vacant lot behind the Gurudwara. It was unkempt, full of weeds and rocks, but it had space. That's all we needed. A few old army friends helped send supplies, ropes, cones, some books, and even old uniforms for training drills. A small donation came in from a retired officer who had heard Amarjeet's story. I used some of my own savings, not for charity, for loyalty. Within a week, the lot was cleared. We painted a small sign on a wooden board and planted it at the entrance. Amarjeet Singh Youth Academy. Learn to lead, live to serve. The first day, 6 boys showed up. Shy, curious, unsure. Simran stood next to me as we welcomed them. "Are you really a soldier?" One kid asked me. "I am," I said, kneeling down to his level. "But the real soldier was my friend. He died so you could grow up without fear, so you could have something more than survival. He believed in you. All of you." Another kid pointed at Simran. "What does she do?" "She's your first instructor," I said, "and if you don't listen to her, she'll make you do 50 push-ups." The boys laughed, but when Simran clapped her hands and barked her first command, they straightened up. "Line up," she said. "Backs straight, heads high. You're here because someone believed you're not just ordinary. Don't waste it." And they listened. That evening, we sat under a tree beside the lot, watching the boys run laps and go through drills. Simran had never looked stronger, not physically, but in presence, like she had found her voice. "I think this is what he wanted," she said, eyes shining. I nodded. "He just didn't get the chance to build it himself, so now it's our job." She looked at me. "Do you think he's watching?" I didn't answer. I just looked at the sky and thought of Amarjeet, laughing, yelling at the boys for bad posture, giving high fives to anyone who finished a lap without quitting. In that space, in those kids, in Simran's voice, he was already alive again. A few weeks passed. The academy slowly began to grow. What started with 6 kids turned into 20 by the end of the month. Word spread fast in the village and beyond. Parents began sending their children, not just for training, but because they believed in the idea. They believed in Amarjeet, because they'd seen what his loss had done to their own hearts, and they wanted their children to carry his name forward in strength, not silence. Every morning at 6 a.m., the field would echo with young voices, shouting commands, repeating prayers, running drills. Simran handled most of the teaching. She was tough but patient. She had taken Amarjeet's diary and turned it into a curriculum. His ideas, his goals, his lessons, they were now rules on the wall of a shed we turned into the academy office. Rule 1. Stand up when others bow down. Rule number 2. Speak truth even when it's heavy. Rule number 3. Never forget where you came from. I handled the physical training, Push-ups, obstacle courses, self-defense basics. I watch these kids come in lazy, distracted, some even broken, and slowly begin to change. Not all of them had fathers at home. Not all of them had belief in themselves. But here, under Amarjeet's name, they started standing straighter, thinking deeper. One boy, Mandeep, stood out. Quiet kid, 11, maybe 12. Thin arms, always walking with his head down. First week he cried every day, hated running, wanted to quit. But Simran refused to let him go. He reminds me of Amarjeet, she said. The stubbornness, the doubt. He just needs someone to see through it. By the third week, Mandeep was leading warm-ups. Not the strongest, not the fastest, but the loudest when it came to shouting Waheguru during prayer. That's all it took. One small win, one moment of pride, and the boy became someone else. One evening after training, I sat with Simran near the academy sign. We watched the kids play with a ball made from old socks and cloth. No fancy equipment, just laughter and dust. She broke the silence. I used to think Amarjeet was foolish for joining the army, that he left us when we needed him most. I looked at her. You don't think that anymore? She shook her head. No. I think he gave us the strength to become something without him. And now I see it wasn't abandonment. It was belief. I nodded. He didn't run away from home. He ran toward something. And in doing that, he pulled all of us forward with him. We sat quietly for a while. She handed me another page from Amarjeet's diary, one she had torn out and laminated. It read, "If even one kid becomes braver because of me, then maybe I didn't live for nothing." I swallowed hard. He didn't, not even close. She smiled. There's one more thing. What? I want to register the academy officially, make it legal, apply for government grants, maybe even tie up with the Army Welfare Board, get proper gear, uniforms, training support. I grinned. That's a big step. It's the right one. I don't want this to be a village camp forever. I want it to be his legacy. Something that outlives me, outlives even you. We spent the next few days preparing papers. I contacted a few officers I knew from my unit. Some agreed to write recommendations. One even promised to come down and inspect the place himself. And then, the call came. A local TV news reporter wanted to do a segment on the academy. Said they'd heard about it through a defense welfare group. They wanted to meet the founders. Take photos, interview Simran, the kids. When I told her, she panicked. I can't do that, I'm not good with cameras. You're running the whole show. You're the face of this place, you have to. She paused, then said, only if you stand beside me. I will, I promised. The day of the interview, Simran wore a simple white kurta and tied her hair back. She stood in front of the camera nervous until they asked her, why did you start this academy? She took a breath and looked straight at the lens. Because my brother didn't get to finish what he started. But I will. In that moment, I saw it again. That same fire Amarjeet had. Same voice. Same soul. He wasn't just her brother anymore. He was her mission. 2 days after the news segment aired, everything changed. Calls started coming in. Not just from nearby towns, but from retired officers, youth mentors, even foundations. Some offered funding, others offered equipment. A few just called to say they were proud. The academy was no longer just a quiet tribute. It was a movement. Simran handled it like someone born to lead. She answered emails, drafted proposals, made schedules. I stood back and watched her grow into something powerful. Amarjeet may have been the soldier, but she had become the commander of his legacy. The local government office invited her to speak at an event for Republic Day. She was nervous again, but this time, she didn't hesitate. Before the event, she came to me and asked, do you think he'd really be proud? I didn't even blink. Simran, if he could see you now, he'd say, look at her, she's better than I ever was. And he'd mean it. The event was held in a school auditorium packed with students, parents, teachers, and a few officers in uniform. When they introduced her, they mentioned Amarjeet's name with full honors. The crowd stood and clapped. Simran took the mic. Her voice didn't shake. My brother was a soldier. But before that, he was just a boy from a small village who believed in something bigger than himself. He believed that strength wasn't in fighting, it was in protecting. He believed that you don't have to wear a uniform to serve your country. You just have to show up. Every day. With courage. The applause didn't stop for a full minute. Afterward, a senior officer approached us. He was quiet, serious. He didn't speak right away, just looked at the academy pamphlet she'd handed him. "We're starting a program next month," he said. "Civilian youth training. We want to include grassroots academies like yours." Simran looked at him, stunned. "You mean government-supported?" He nodded. "Yes, if you're ready." She turned to me, eyes wide. I nodded once. "We're ready." That night we sat outside the academy again. Kids had gone home. The sky above us was dark, but the field was lit with soft yellow bulbs we'd managed to hang last week. The signboard had been updated. Amarjeet Singh Leadership Academy. Recognized partner of Youth Defense Initiative. Simran leaned, back staring up. "You know what still hurts?" "What?" "That he never saw this. That he died thinking he hadn't done enough. That he left this world apologizing." I sat beside her, quiet for a moment. "He didn't fail, Simran. He gave us the starting point. And sometimes that's more powerful than finishing something, because the people who start the fire don't always live to see the warmth it gives others. But without them, nothing ever burns." She wiped her face with her sleeve, silent. Then she asked me something I hadn't expected. "Why do you stay?" I looked at her. "Because he was my brother, too. And because this place feels more like home than anywhere else. You could have left, gone back to the army, moved on." "I did move on," I said. "Right here. Every day I spend here, I feel like I'm still serving him, still listening to him laugh in my ear, telling me to get my lazy ass up and make something of myself." She smiled at that. "Would you mind?" she asked softly. "If we added your name to?" "To what?" "The academy. On the documents. You've done just as much as I have." I shook my head. "No. This place is his. Every brick, every kid, every prayer. It belongs to Amarjeet." She nodded slowly. "Okay. But then at least let me call you what the kids do." "What's that?" "Coach Virji." I smiled. "That I can live with." That night after Simran left, I walked one last lap around the field alone. I stopped near the training circle where Amarjeet's diary rules were painted on wood. Whispered under my breath, "We kept our promise, brother. They know your name now, and they'll never forget it." And in that quiet moment, for the first time since he died, I didn't feel heavy. I felt complete. A month later, on what would have been Amarjeet's 27th birthday, we held a ceremony at the academy. No uniforms, no rifles, no gun salutes, just children. Children lined up in crisp white clothes with orange and blue headbands tied across their foreheads, the same colors Amarjeet had once worn in his first photo as a cadet. Each child carried a candle. Each one had memorized a line from Amarjeet's diary, lines about courage, about failure, about standing for something even when you're alone. The program was simple, a prayer, a few short speeches, and then each child stood before a small photo of Amarjeet, placed on a pedestal with marigolds, and read their chosen line aloud. "I will speak truth, even if my voice shakes. I will never let fear decide who I am. I will not waste the life others died to protect." Simran stood at the end. She didn't read from his diary. She spoke from her heart. "Bye," she said, eyes glistening but not breaking. "I used to be angry at you for leaving. I thought you chose the army over us. I thought you abandoned us for medals and duty. But I see now, you didn't leave us. You handed us the torch." She looked at the kids behind her and continued, "Every one of them is a piece of you. Every drill, every lesson, every time they fall and get up again, it's you. You didn't die with regret, Pai. You lived with purpose, and that purpose is just getting started." The crowd clapped gently. Some wiped their eyes. A few elders nodded in that quiet, proud way only those who've known loss can. When the candles were lit and placed around the academy's boundary, the place glowed. It wasn't fancy, it wasn't grand, but it was alive. It breathed Amarjeet's name in the silence between chants. It held his memory in every cracked brick and trampled patch of grass. I stood next to Simran, both of us watching the kids run, one last lap before going home. "You know," I said, "he'd have loved this, all of it." "I know," she whispered. "Sometimes I still hear him, bossing me around, arguing, laughing. I hear him too, I said. Especially when I feel tired and want to quit. He always had a way of kicking you in the ribs without touching you. We both laughed. The kind of laugh that still stings at the end. Before we locked up for the night, Simran walked to the academy board. With a black marker, she added a line. Beneath the academy's name, built from a promise, powered by love, forged in sacrifice. She stepped back, read it aloud once and nodded. Perfect. As I left the academy that night, I looked back one last time. From 6 kids to 60. From one broken promise to a living legacy. From one death to countless lives reshaped. And now I ask, you, who in your life made a sacrifice that you've never fully honored? Who whispered something with their last breath that you never got to answer? Because this story isn't just Amarjeet's, it's ours. It's about what we choose to carry forward when the people we love can't walk beside us anymore. If someone gave their all so you could stand today, don't let their name fade in your silence. Build something. Say their name. Live in a way that answers their final whisper. And when someone asks, why do you do it? Tell them, because he mattered.